We usually think about a meeting as like a collaborative effort.
Right. A team sport.
Exactly. Like everyone gathers around the big mahogany table, you look at a shared problem, and you collectively build a solution piece by piece.
It sounds incredibly rational, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds constructive and comforting, really. I mean, we want to believe that the corporate world is this pure meritocracy.
Where you just bring good data, present a logical argument,
and everyone applauds. Right.
Yeah.
And then you just move forward together.
Right. But then you step out of that one-on-one scenario and cross the threshold into the executive boardroom.
And suddenly that whole cooperative team sport illusion just shatters completely.
Completely. You are looking at an environment that is anything but a pure meritocracy.
Yeah, the rules change the exact moment that door closes.
They really do.
You aren't entering a collaboration. You're stepping into, like, a corporate gladiatorial arena where language is your primary weapon.
Oh, absolutely. The boardroom has its own completely hidden semantics and these raw power dynamics.
Which is exactly why today we are taking you right into the heart of that arena.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic.
It really is. We're drawing from this incredibly insightful transcript and vocabulary breakdown from the Pod Zone.
Which is such a great resource.
It's amazing. They are dedicated to helping ambitious professionals master C2 level English.
The absolute peak of language mastery.
Right. But I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't just a language lesson today.
No, none.
This is survival training. We want to arm you with the linguistic tools to not just survive group meetings, but to completely control them.
Because the modern boardroom is this uniquely complex psychological space.
It is.
And the source material completely reorients how we need to look at this environment. I mean, we all know the universal groan of, this meeting could have been an email.
Oh, yeah. We literally printed it on coffee mugs.
Right. We despise meetings because they feel like a colossal waste of billable hours.
But if they're so inefficient, we really have to ask why the corporate world hasn't evolved past them.
Exactly. And the text provides a striking answer to that.
Yeah.
It says the boardroom is not primarily about efficiency. If it were, it would indeed be an email.
Right. It would just be a memo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, it serves an entirely different sociological function. The boardroom is a theater of visibility.
A theater of visibility. I mean, that phrasing instantly changes the stakes, doesn't it?
It completely reframes it.
You aren't just there to exchange quarterly data. You are on stage.
Yes.
You are there to be seen, to be measured, and evaluated by your peers and superiors in real time.
Precisely. And to understand the script of this play, the text uses a concept that is just crucial for anyone trying to navigate corporate hierarchies.
Okay, what is it?
The boardroom is a discursive space.
Discursive.
Yeah. In sociology and linguistics, a discursive space is a physical and psychological arena where power is constantly being negotiated.
Negotiated, challenged, solidified.
Right. And it's all done entirely through modes of communication. It is a space shaped exclusively by who speaks, how they speak, and who is silenced.
Wow. And usually, let's be honest, that space is a complete cacophony.
Oh, total cacophony.
Just a chaotic, harsh mixture of competing egos just making noise at each other.
Yeah, everyone trying to secure their spot in the pecking order.
And if you lack inherent corporate privilege, like maybe you're the youngest person in the room, or minority, or a non-native English speaker trying to navigate this incredibly nuanced environment.
This theater can feel like an impossible challenge.
Yeah, it really can.
Yeah.
You're walking onto a stage where everyone else seems to inherently know the blocking.
And the unwritten dialogue.
Exactly. And you are just trying not to get knocked off your feet.
That is the reality for so many professionals. I mean, if you have ever sat in a meeting and felt completely invisible.
Which I think we all have.
Right, or felt like your carefully researched ideas were swallowed up by the loudest person in the room.
It's the worst feeling.
It's because you were operating under the assumption that the meeting was a collaboration.
While the loudest person knew it was a discursive competition.
Exactly. They were playing a different game.
So our goal today is to give you the exact, highly calibrated scripts to level that playing field.
We want to turn that cacophony into something you can orchestrate.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are looking at this like a gladiator arena, you first need to know how to defend against a direct strike.
The immediate physical, verbal strike.
Right. And in this discursive space, that direct strike is the most pervasive weapon deployed in the boardroom. The interruption.
Yes, the classic interruption.
But I do want to push back on this slightly, just to make sure we're viewing the whole picture.
Sure.
Isn't an interruption sometimes just innocent?
What do you mean?
Well, like, if a colleague is simply overly excited or deeply passionate about an idea, they might literally just lack the impulse control to wait their turn.
Yeah, they just blurt it out.
Right. Do we really have to view every interruption as a hostile attack?
It's a natural assumption to make because in our personal lives, like with friends or family, we want to assume positive intent.
Yeah, a friend interrupting you at dinner might just be eager to agree with you.
Exactly. But the sociologists and linguists cited in our source material have studied this dynamic extensively within corporate hierarchies.
And what did they find?
They've arrived at a very clear conclusion. In the specific context of the executive boardroom, an interruption is rarely just a breach of etiquette.
Or an overflow of passion.
Right. It is almost always a dominance display.
A dominance display, wow. Like an animal puffing up its chest to show the rest of the pack who is in charge.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And the source uses a very specific, heavy term for this mechanism.
What's the term?
Linguistic disenfranchisement.
Linguistic disenfranchisement. Okay, so we usually associate disenfranchisement with, like, taking away someone's right to vote in a democracy.
Right. But in a discursive space, linguistic disenfranchisement means someone is actively, purposefully depriving you of your right to speak.
Man, that is dark.
It is. When a colleague interrupts you, they are not merely eager to share their brilliant idea.
So what are they actually doing?
The underlying mechanism, the message they are implicitly broadcasting to the entire room, is that their unformed, unfinished thought is inherently more valuable than your completed one.
Wow. When you frame the mechanism like that, it strips away the whole "I'm just so excited" excuse entirely.
Completely.
It becomes a direct statement of hierarchy.
Yes.
They are effectively saying, my voice matters more than yours right here, right now, and I have the power to take your time away from you.
Exactly. And the text paints a very vivid, visceral picture of how this happens. Let's look at the scenario they map out.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine you are in the middle of a major presentation. You spent, 3 weeks on this strategy.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
Yeah.
You are halfway through articulating a complex framework. You hold the floor, and suddenly a colleague, let's call him David.
We all know a David.
Oh, we all know David. David just completely bulldozes over your sentence.
Just runs right through the stop sign?
Yep. He hijacks the narrative, and he steers the entire conversation down a completely unrelated tangent.
A tangent, which is incredibly disruptive.
Very.
I mean, a tangent is a completely different line of thought or action that just veers off from the central topic.
Yes. David hasn't just stopped you from speaking. He has derailed the entire train of the meeting.
The agenda you were carefully building is now just gone, replaced by his immediate priority.
Exactly.
So, okay, you're sitting there, you've just been steamrolled, your strategy's been hijacked. Let's look at the physiological reaction we all experience in that exact microsecond.
Because it's universal.
It really is. Your heart rate spikes, you get this sudden cortisol dump, you might feel a flush of heat in your face.
Oh yeah, the fight or flight kicks in.
Right. And the room goes quiet as everyone watches to see how you handle this dominance test.
And according to the text, human beings generally fall into one of two traps in this moment.
The classic fight or flight response, but translated into corporate behavior.
Yes. And it's vital to understand why both of these biological instincts are disastrous in the theater of visibility.
Let's break them down. What's trap number one?
Trap number one is the flight response. Surrender.
You simply yield.
Right. David is talking louder. He's taken the wheel. So you just close your mouth, look down at your notepad, and retreat into silence.
You let him have the floor.
You do.
If I take trap one and surrender, I imagine I'm immediately seen as passive by the rest of the room.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the bystanders probably think, I don't even believe my own idea was worth defending.
That is exactly how the room maps the hierarchy in real time. The immediate consequence of surrender is a catastrophic loss of your gravitas.
Gravitas, that deep executive weight.
Yes, that dignity and seriousness of manner, it completely evaporates.
Boof, gone.
The theater of visibility is watching you, and the nonverbal message you just broadcasted is, I am willing to be subjugated.
Wow. And once you establish that precedent, it becomes exponentially harder to command respect on any future project.
Your mass in the room shrinks.
So surrendering ruins your executive presence. That brings us to trap number two.
Which is the fight response.
Right. Snap. You feel the deep injustice of the interruption, your ego flares up, and you react with petulant aggression.
You raise your voice over his...
Yeah, you snap, "Excuse me, David, I wasn't finished." Or, "Let me finish."
You're actively defending yourself.
You are. But look at the psychological cost of the mechanism you chose.
Right.
If you snap, the room immediately labels you as defensive.
You appear emotionally volatile.
And in corporate culture, perhaps the most damaging label of all is being deemed difficult.
Oh, it's the kiss of death.
You lose the high ground entirely. By raising your voice and bickering about who gets to speak, you've allowed David to drag you down into a personal, petty squabble.
Which instantly diminishes the professional weight of the highly researched strategy you were originally trying to present.
Right. The room is no longer thinking about your data. They were thinking about your temper.
It's a completely lose-lose situation.
So if both the fight response and the flight response are off the table, if going silent makes you weak, but yelling back makes you look volatile.
But you actually do.
Yeah. How does a true C2 level communicator reclaim the floor without compromising their gravitas?
You must deploy what the source outlines as the authoritative reclaim.
The authoritative reclaim. Okay.
This countermaneuver is fascinating because it requires you to actively override your biological instincts.
Which is so hard to do in the moment.
It is. You have to recognize the adrenaline spike and consciously choose a calculated surgical response instead.
So I want to focus on the physical execution of this before we even get to the words.
Yeah.
Because the physical presence sets the entire foundation.
It really does.
Imagine you're in that chair. David bulldozes right over your words.
Yeah.
First, you do not raise your volume to shout over him.
Nope.
Second, you do not go silent and look away. Instead, you physically hold your ground.
You maintain steady, unblinking eye contact with David.
Yes. You hold up a single, calm hand in a gentle stop gesture. Not like an aggressive stiff arm, just a firm boundary.
Right.
And you deploy a perfectly calibrated, preloaded sentence. And the script goes like this. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
David, I appreciate your enthusiasm for that tangent, but I am going to hold the floor to conclude my initial premise before we pivot to your point.
Man, that is a spectacular piece of rhetorical architecture.
Isn't it?
There is immense power packed into the precise vocabulary of that single sentence. Let's look at the opening phrase. David, I appreciate your enthusiasm for that tangent.
So you acknowledge the interruption immediately. You don't pretend it didn't happen,
Right.
but you label it. You define his aggressive interjection simply as a tangent.
And that choice of word is incredibly sharp.
It completely disarms the attack.
It's a subtle but devastating categorization. A tangent, by geometric definition, is a line that touches a curve but continues off into irrelevance away from the center.
Wow, yeah, away from the center.
By categorizing his loud, aggressive interruption as a tangent, you are diminishing its importance in real time.
You are framing his interruption not as a vital, urgent correction to your brilliant idea,
But merely as a distraction.
a deviation from the core, important agenda that you were establishing.
It's a sophisticated sleight of hand that recenters you as the authority.
And you aren't explicitly saying his idea is bad, which would make you look combative.
No, not at all.
You're just mathematically defining it as off course. Like, what a fun little tangent you're on, David.
Exactly.
And then we reach the absolute anchor of the sentence, the verbs. I am going to hold the floor.
I love this part. Contrast the psychological weight of, I am going to hold the floor, with the weak supplications we discussed in trap number 2.
Like, I would like to finish.
Or, please let me finish.
Please let me finish is literally begging.
It is.
You are asking for permission. You are submitting to the reality that David currently owns the discursive space, and you are asking him to kindly hand the power back to you.
It puts him in the position of the king granting a favor.
Right. But I am going to hold the floor is a declarative statement of fact.
You are not asking David for anything.
No. You are establishing an unequivocal boundary. You are asserting a fundamental right to the space you already own.
It projects unshakable gravitas because it assumes compliance.
That's a great point. You aren't wondering if he will stop talking.
You are informing him that you are continuing.
Yes. And then there's the brilliant finale of this maneuver. You've stopped him, you've diminished his point to a tangent, you've asserted your right to the floor, and then you finish with, before we pivot to your point.
This is where we see the concept of magnanimity in action.
Magnanimity.
Yes. It's generosity, specifically toward a rival or someone less powerful than you.
Okay, so by assuring David that his point will be addressed eventually, you demonstrate extreme professional generosity.
You do.
But it's a strategic generosity. You're telling him, and the entire room watching this theater that his voice will eventually be heard.
So you don't look like a tyrant.
Exactly. However, you are the one dictating the chronological order of the discourse.
You are deciding when he gets to speak.
You have usurped the usurper.
Yes. And to usurp means to take a position of power or importance illegally or by force.
David tried to usurp your narrative.
But with one calm, mathematically precise sentence, you took the power right back.
You look incredibly professional, perfectly diplomatic, and utterly dominant.
And David is left sitting there, having to wait for your explicit permission to continue his tangent.
It's beautiful. But, okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
What if David lacks all self-awareness? Like, let's explore an edge case here. What if you deploy the authoritative reclaim? You hold up your hand, you say the script, and David just keeps talking louder over you.
That is the ultimate stress test of your gravitas.
Right, because you can't just repeat the script.
No. If David ignores the boundary, he is escalating from a dominance display to outright professional hostility.
So what's the play?
The key here is to not break character. You do not escalate your volume to match his.
Because then you're back in trap two.
Exactly. Instead, you pause, you let him finish his hostile overrun, you look at him with a degree of clinical disappointment, and you say, as I was stating before the interruption, and you simply resume.
Wow. Clinical disappointment.
Yes. The room will have witnessed his complete lack of decorum and your steadfast refusal to be rattled.
He ends up looking entirely out of control, like a toddler throwing a tantrum.
While you look like the only adult in the room.
It's all about maintaining that clinical detachment. Mastering this direct defense is essential.
It really is.
But, loud, aggressive interruptions are actually the easiest threats to spot because they happen right out in the open.
Right, they're obvious.
The source text points out that there is a quieter, far more insidious threat lurking in these meetings.
And this one is fascinating.
We know how to handle the loud hijacking, but what happens when no one argues at all?
When you look at a boardroom where everyone is just nodding along with the CEO or the manager, you might intuitively think things are going perfectly.
Yeah, you think, wow, we're so aligned today.
The meeting feels highly efficient, but sociologists identify this as a critically dangerous state.
They call this phenomenon groupthink.
Groupthink, exactly.
No, groupthink is when the desire for harmony completely overrides the desire for a good, rational outcome.
The group prioritizes not rocking the boat over actually analyzing the data.
Which is terrifying when you think about the decisions being made.
Yeah.
And the text introduces a fascinating sociological term for a specific extreme flavor of this.
The Abilene paradox.
The Abilene paradox.
It is so vital to understand because it explains how smart individuals collectively make incredibly foolish decisions.
Okay, define it for us.
It describes a situation where a group of people collectively decide on a course of action that is actually counter to the preferences of every single individual in that group.
Wait, really? That concept is so counterintuitive. A group decides to do something that literally nobody in the room actually wants to do.
Yes.
How does the psychology of that even work?
It works through a cascading series of false assumptions. Everyone in the room assumes that everyone else agrees with the proposal.
Okay.
Because you think you are the only one who sees the flaw, you stay quiet to avoid being the outlier.
Oh, wow. So everyone is privately managing everyone else's perceived feelings.
As a result, the entire group marches confidently off a cliff together, all while privately dreading the fall.
It's a collective hallucination of agreement.
That is a perfect way to phrase it.
I think we've all experienced the corporate equivalent of this, like a senior executive proposes an objectively terrible idea.
Oh, constantly.
Maybe it's a product launch timeline that defies the laws of physics, or a marketing strategy that is clearly tone deaf.
Right.
And you sit there looking around the mahogany table, waiting for someone, anyone, to point out the glaring flaw.
But nobody does.
Instead, everyone just subtly nods. The Abilene paradox is settling in like a fog.
And what's crucial to realize is that this fog doesn't just roll in by accident.
Really?
No. Leaders, often subconsciously but sometimes very deliberately, weaponize language to force this paradox into existence.
This was a huge revelation for me when reading the source. Leaders use a tactic called presumptive linguistics to trap the room.
Let's look at a classic example of how this trap is set. Okay.
A manager pitches a deeply flawed idea, and instead of opening the floor for a genuine debate and asking, what are the potential risks here?
They say something else entirely.
They say, so I think we're all aligned on this. Correct.
Ugh, I hate that phrase. Or my absolute nightmare phrase, unless there are any major objections, we'll move forward.
Those phrases are incredibly toxic to a discursive space
Why is that?
because they fundamentally alter the rules of engagement. By using presumptive linguistics, the manager has framed dissent not as a helpful contribution to a brainstorming session, but as a hostile disruption of established progress.
Oh, they've completely raised the stakes on the mechanism of speaking up.
Exactly.
If you open your mouth after a manager says, unless there are any major objections, you aren't just tossing out a different perspective.
No, you are officially registering a major objection.
You are declaring a state of emergency.
Exactly. You are suddenly positioning yourself as the sole obstacle to the group's forward momentum.
Wow. The manager has built a comfortable echo chamber, an environment where only their own beliefs are reinforced and all alternatives are shut out.
And if you speak up in that echo chamber, you are threatening the peace of the entire room.
You are.
The instinct to survive the corporate hierarchy tells you to stay quiet. I mean, you look like the bad guy just for trying to do your job and point out a risk.
It requires immense psychological courage to puncture that false consensus.
And to puncture something means to make a sudden small hole in it,
Right.
metaphorically deflating an illusion.
Right. You have to take a needle to this giant balloon of fake agreement.
But here is the massive dilemma for anyone listening to this deep dive. Your value as a high-level professional, the literal reason you were hired and given a seat at that table,
Is rooted in your critical thinking.
exactly.
Okay.
It is not rooted in your blind compliance. You are paid to see the iceberg the ship is heading toward.
But if you stand up and scream iceberg the wrong way, you just get thrown overboard for causing a panic.
What a great analogy.
Yeah.
So the complex question becomes, how do you disagree without committing career suicide?
It's the million-dollar question.
How do you dissent gracefully in an environment that has been engineered to punish dissent?
This requires a highly sophisticated linguistic maneuver.
Okay, lay it on us.
You have to puncture the echo chamber while actually increasing your executive presence, rather than looking like a troublemaker.
And the source provides a stunningly effective strategy for this, called validation and deviation.
Validation and deviation. The core philosophy behind this is that you must first validate the underlying goal of the proposal before you attempt to dismantle the mechanics of the proposal itself.
So you're patting them on the back before you take away their toy?
Sort of. You have to explicitly show the room that you are on the same team, trying to win the exact same game, before you tell them that their current play is going to lose the match.
Let's run a high-stakes scenario from the text to see the mechanics of this in action.
Sure. Let's say the CEO is feeling immense pressure from the board and suggests a sweeping cut to the marketing budget to instantly boost Q3 profits.
Now, to anyone who understands the market dynamics, this is a disastrous, short-sighted idea.
Right. It will completely ruin Q4 and permanently damage the brand.
But the CEO is intimidating. The room is nodding in passive compliance.
The Abilene paradox is in full effect.
You know you need to interject.
Yeah.
But if you just say, that's a terrible idea, it'll ruin us, you trigger the CEO's defensive reflexes.
Yes, instantly.
Instead, you deploy validation and deviation. The script sounds like this. I entirely recognize the imperative to optimize our Q3 margins, and I am fully aligned with that macro objective. However, I must register a dissenting perspective regarding the reduction of the marketing budget as the vehicle to achieve it.
The precision of that phrasing is remarkable. Let's do an in-depth syntactic breakdown of why this works so flawlessly on human psychology.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the pivot phrase. I must register a dissenting perspective.
It sounds incredibly formal, almost clinical.
It is, and that clinical formality is the source of its power. Look at the shift in framing. You aren't arguing with the CEO.
You aren't disagreeing in a hot-blooded, emotional, or personal way.
No, you are registering a perspective.
It's like you're filing a legal brief or a piece of mandatory paperwork in the discursive space.
Precisely. You elevate the disagreement from a personal squabble into a formal professional obligation.
You are effectively telling the CEO, I am required by my professional ethics and my role in this company to place this data on the table.
And that completely neutralizes the emotional defensiveness that usually accompanies pushback.
Because you've removed your own ego from the statement.
Exactly.
Let's zero in on the specific word choices in the rest of the sentence, because the contrast you set up is brilliant.
Which words stand out to you?
You start by saying, I recognize the imperative to optimize margins. An imperative is a command or a factor of vital importance that cannot be ignored.
Right. You are actively validating the CEO's anxiety. You are telling them, I see the goal and I agree the goal is absolutely vital.
You even call it a macro objective, which puts you right there at the 10,000-foot executive view alongside them.
You are standing shoulder to shoulder with leadership.
But then, having secured that shared ground, you introduce the deviation. You challenge the vehicle.
The vehicle to achieve it. This metaphor is the linchpin of the strategy.
It really is. You validate the destination,
Yeah.
the higher profits, the imperative, but you challenge the vehicle, the budget cuts that they are trying to drive to get there.
It's like a surgeon operating on a patient. You don't just hack wildly at the tumor.
No, you have to carefully validate and preserve the healthy tissue around it first, so the host body doesn't reject the surgery.
That's a powerful analogy. You are preserving the healthy tissue of the CEO's goal while surgically excising the tumor of their bad idea.
It separates the intent from the execution. It allows the CEO to feel heard, respected, and validated regarding their strategic goal while creating a safe psychological space for you to dismantle their flawed execution plan.
However, the text outlines an absolute non-negotiable rule of dissent here.
Oh, right, the pivot.
Yes, once you create that discursive space, once you pause the room, stop the momentum, and register your dissenting perspective, you cannot just stop talking.
Right. The rule is you must immediately pivot to a superior alternative. Dissent without a viable alternative isn't leadership.
It's just complaining.
If you tell the surgeon to drop the scalpel, you better be handing them a laser immediately.
Exactly. You have to fill the void you just created.
You have to say, regarding the reduction of the marketing budget as the vehicle to achieve it, instead, I propose we look at aggressively reallocating our external vendor contracts.
That pivot is mandatory. Because if you just dismantle the CEO's idea and leave the room with nothing but the original problem, you instantly become the obstacle the manager was warning against.
You become the problem.
But if you validate the goal, deviate on the method, and propose a new path, you don't look like an obstacle. You look like a visionary.
Man, that is so powerful. Okay, so let's say you execute this flawlessly.
You're having a great meeting.
You are. You've used your authoritative reclaim to stop David from interrupting. You've used your elegant dissent to steer the CEO away from a bad idea without bruising their ego.
You have effectively broken the groupthink.
You've punkered the false consensus and proven your immense value. But in doing so, there are secondary consequences in the theater of visibility.
There always are.
You might have inadvertently threatened a colleague.
Oh, certainly.
You might have exposed the fact that someone else's department isn't pulling its weight. Or you've dismantled a pet project someone else loved.
And in this arena, they cannot let that public slight stand.
So they try to strike back.
They recognize that you have seized narrative control, and they attempt to forcefully regain it.
And the mechanism they use to retaliate is attempting to corner you.
To corner someone is to force them into a situation where they have to make an impossible choice.
Or answer a wildly difficult question, leaving them no easy escape.
They build a trap.
Which brings us to the final defensive maneuver we need to cover today. The trap and the ultimate escape hatch, the strategic pivot.
When a colleague feels their status threatened by your sudden display of competence and discursive control, they will often retaliate with a hostile, loaded, or leading question.
And their goal is not to gather information, is it?
No, not at all. Their goal is to put you on the defensive. They want to make you sweat, stumble, and lose your gravitas in front of the executive team.
Let's set up the trap scenario from the text. You've just eloquently offered your alternative strategy for vendor contracts.
Feeling good about yourself?
Yep. And a colleague across the table leans forward, stares you down, and asks, "Isn't it true that your department is single-handedly responsible for the delay in the software launch?"
Oof. Let's unpack the sinister mechanics of this trap. Look at how it is structurally engineered.
It is a binary question, a yes or no question, masquerading as a genuine professional inquiry.
But it is a pure lose-lose proposition.
It's a complete bear trap. If you step into it and say yes, you are admitting complete operational failure in front of the entire executive team.
Your gravitas is instantly destroyed.
But if you say no, you fall right back into trap number 2 from the interruption phase. You sound defensive.
You sound evasive. You end up bickering about who is actually responsible, dragging yourself down into the mud.
You start saying things like, "No, it wasn't us, it was the QA team who dropped the ball."
And suddenly you look incredibly petty and unprofessional.
The premise of the question itself is toxic. The colleague has built a tiny, confining, backwards-looking box, and they are demanding that you step inside it and defend yourself.
So how do you escape a trap designed with no exit?
You have to redefine the exit.
Exactly. The solution provided in our text is a technique perfected by master politicians and media spokespeople, but it is equally vital for corporate executives.
It is the art of the strategic pivot.
The strategic pivot.
I love the working definition of this tactic. The strategic pivot is the art of answering the question you want to answer, rather than the one you were asked.
It's verbal judo. You use their aggressive momentum against them, completely flipping the dynamic.
You fundamentally refuse to accept the premise of their question. You refuse to step into their little box.
Let's look at the exact C2 level script for escaping this specific binary trap.
Okay, so they ask, isn't it true that your department is single-handedly responsible for the delay in the software launch?
You do not say yes. You do not say no. You do not get defensive.
You look at them calmly and say, while the timeline of the software launch is certainly a critical metric, the more pressing variable we must isolate today is the structural bottleneck in cross-departmental communication. Let's examine how we can streamline that workflow.
The psychological agility required to execute that is phenomenal.
It really is.
Let's do a syntactic breakdown of why this pivot works so well. This is discursive dominance in its purest form.
And it relies on a very specific, balanced grammatical structure.
Yes. While topic A is a metric, the more pressing variable is topic B.
It is brilliant because it doesn't ignore the colleague entirely. If you just ignore the question, you would seem rude, evasive, or scared.
Right, you have to acknowledge the energy they directed at you.
Instead, you briefly acknowledge their premise. You nod to topic A, the software timeline. Well, the timeline is certainly a critical metric.
But look at the mechanism in the second half of the sentence. The more pressing variable we must isolate today is.
In one breath, you acknowledge their topic exists, but you instantly demote its priority.
You declare with absolute unwavering executive authority that your topic is more pressing.
You literally grab the conversational steering wheel out of their hands.
You really do.
You take the spotlight right off your department's alleged failure in the petty blame game, and you redirect the entire room's attention toward a massive systemic issue.
You point them toward a structural bottleneck.
A bottleneck, which is a point of congestion in a system that slows down the overall process.
Notice the profound shift in perspective you've just engineered. You have shifted the room's focus from blame, which is inherently backward-looking, defensive, and small-minded, to process improvement.
Which is forward-looking, collaborative, and executive-minded.
Exactly.
Let's examine how we can streamline that workflow. You aren't just dodging a bullet. You are actively inviting the entire room, including the CEO, to collaborate on a higher-level problem.
Think about how that makes your colleague look.
Oh, man. The person who asked the trap question suddenly looks small, petty, and obsessed with pointing fingers.
While you look like the macro-level visionary trying to fix the whole company's system.
You elevate yourself by refusing to engage in their mudslinging.
And this, right here, reveals the ultimate relevance of this entire deep dive for the listener.
Yeah, let's bring it back to you, the listener.
This isn't just about learning fancy vocabulary words. It is about a breathtaking exertion of narrative control.
When you can master these specific linguistic mechanisms, your entire professional trajectory changes.
Think about the toolkit you now possess.
You have the authoritative reclaim to shut down the direct attack of an interruption without losing your temper or your dignity.
You have the elegant dissent, allowing you to puncture the passive threat of groupthink, validate leadership, and propose alternatives without committing career suicide.
And you have the strategic pivot to escape hostile traps, seizing narrative control and redirecting the room's focus from petty blame to macro-level solutions.
When you combine those three maneuvers, you undergo a fundamental transformation in the discursive space.
You really do. You stop being a passive attendee hoping your hard work speaks for itself.
You stop being a victim of the cacophony.
You become virtually untouchable. You become the gravitational center of the boardroom.
The theater of visibility is suddenly playing your script, and you are directing the action.
It is an incredibly empowering realization for anyone who has ever felt sidelined.
You are not at the mercy of the loudest voices or the most aggressive egos.
The English language, when deployed with this level of precision and psychological strategy, is the ultimate equalizer.
It really is.
This has been an incredible journey through the hidden mechanics of corporate power. We started by stripping away the illusion of the boardroom as a purely rational, collaborative utopia, acknowledging its reality as a discursive arena where power is constantly negotiated.
We examined the deep psychological impact of linguistic disenfranchisement, the critical importance of maintaining your gravitas, and the highly specific scripts required to navigate these threats.
But a tactical toolkit is completely useless if it just sits in the box.
Theory means nothing without practice.
So, we want to issue a direct challenge to you, the listener. We want you to take the exact homework assignment provided by the PodZone source text and apply it in the real world this week.
In your very next meeting, I want you to change your posture. Do not just participate passively.
Take a notepad and become an active, clinical observer of the theater.
Tally who interrupts whom. Notice the real-time power dynamics playing out.
Watch how people surrender their gravitas and watch who is actively usurping the floor.
Listen closely for the presumptive language used by leaders to force the Abilene paradox.
Wait for a manager to say, "I assume we're all aligned," and watch how the room psychologically folds.
And most importantly, do not wait until you are under fire to figure out what to say.
Script out your own validation and deviation sentence ahead of time. Find a topic on the agenda you know will be contentious, and write down exactly how you will validate the macro objective and deviate on the vehicle.
Have it ready on the tip of your tongue so you can deploy it seamlessly the moment the echo chamber starts forming.
Transform this theory into practice. Observe the cacophony, recognize the disenfranchisement, maintain your gravitas, and command the discursive space.
That's the mission.
But before we officially close out today's deep dive, we want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on everything we've extracted from the text today regarding the nature of the game we are all playing.
We've just spent this entire session treating the English language like a tactical weapon system.
We really have.
We've analyzed how to carefully negotiate power, how to surgically dodge hostile traps, and how to assert dominance just to survive a standard corporate meeting.
We've had to learn how to actively manipulate the psychology of our peers.
Which is exhausting.
Right. So ask yourself this. If we have to rely on this level of sophisticated, almost clinical linguistic manipulation just to ensure our baseline, logical, well-researched ideas are heard fairly in a meeting, what does that reveal about the fundamental design of modern corporate hierarchies?
It suggests a system that rewards gamesmanship over actual merit. If the boardroom is truly a theater where we are forced to perform just to be seen, maybe it's time we stop just memorizing our lines and start asking who wrote the script in the first place.
What a thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us in the arena today. We hope you feel armed, prepared, and ready to reclaim your floor. We'll see you on the next deep dive. You know, when you picture a high-stakes corporate boardroom, it is almost impossible not to rely on the cinematic version of it.
Absolutely, the Hollywood version.
Right. You imagine this sprawling, glass-walled room at the top of a skyscraper, and executives are just slamming their fists on these heavy mahogany tables.
Right, yelling over each other.
Exactly, making these blunt, aggressive demands, pointing fingers, maybe throwing quarterly reports across the room. It's loud, it's overt, and above all, it is entirely obvious who is attacking whom.
Yeah, because that is how we have been culturally conditioned to view conflict, you know? We expect the battle lines to be clearly drawn.
We really do.
We expect a boardroom dispute to look a lot like a traditional physical confrontation, just wearing expensive Italian suits and Rolexes. We expect the aggression to be legible.
But the truth is, the most devastating career assassinations, they don't happen at a shout. They happen at a whisper.
Cloaked in collegial smiles.
Cloaked in collegial smiles and extreme politeness. So today we are going to completely shatter that Hollywood illusion of the boardroom.
We have to. It's so inaccurate.
Because according to the deep dive we are taking today, the modern corporate environment is not a theater of overt aggression at all. Instead, it is, the source calls it a velvet-draped battlefield.
I love that. That is such a perfectly evocative phrase, a velvet-draped battlefield.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does, because it implies that the environment is luxurious, accommodating, and incredibly soft on the surface, but underneath that plush exterior.
Beneath the catered lunches and the casual Fridays.
Exactly. Beneath all that, it is a landscape of profound, tactical, and often ruthless warfare.
And our mission for this deep dive is to arm you for that exact battlefield. We are going to decode the hidden language of corporate survival.
And we have some incredible source material for this.
We do. Our primary sources for this exploration come from an advanced linguistic program called PodZone. Specifically, we are dissecting audio and transcripts from episode 14, part 2, alongside its companion breakdown of C2 level vocabulary and idioms.
And just to clarify, when we say C2, we are talking about the absolute pinnacle of English mastery according to international frameworks.
The highest level.
The highest. We are exploring the most manipulative, most nuanced levels of communication utilized in these high-stakes corporate settings.
It is the kind of communication where the words being spoken out loud are, in many ways, the least important part of the conversation, right?
Oh, absolutely. The literal semantic meaning is just the vehicle. It is all about the subtext, the strategic deployment of syntax, and, the subtle, invisible manipulation of power dynamics in the room.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you have ever walked out of an office meeting feeling completely frustrated or subtly insulted, but you couldn't quite put your finger on exactly why it happened.
Which happens to all of us?
All the time. Or if you just want to understand the invisible linguistic currents that dictate who actually holds power in your organization, regardless of what the organizational chart says, well, you are in the right place.
We promise you some major aha moments today.
By the end of this deep dive, you are going to possess the linguistic tools to navigate corporate subterfuge without breaking a single drop of sweat.
It is a remarkable, albeit slightly terrifying, set of tools to acquire.
Terrifying is the right word.
Because I will warn you, once you learn to hear this hidden language, you can never unhear it. It fundamentally changes how you perceive every email in your inbox.
Every weekly stand-up meeting.
Every seemingly casual interaction with your leadership team. Everything.
I am ready to never look at an email the same way again.
Let's jump right into it. We are going to structure this by starting with proactive influence, how you manage upwards.
Right. Before we get into the really dark stuff about how to defend yourself laterally against your peers.
Yeah, we'll save the lateral warfare for later. Let's start with the concept of soft power.
Soft power is arguably the most essential concept in modern corporate hierarchies.
Why is that? Because inevitably, no matter how talented you are, you will eventually find yourself in a position where you desperately need to influence a major company-altering decision, but you entirely lack the formal authority to actually mandate it.
You can't just order them to do it.
No, you have to persuade someone, perhaps a highly autocratic CEO, a senior vice president, or a seasoned board member. You have to change their mind without ever making them feel like you are telling them what to do.
And the ego of that senior leader is the massive, fragile elephant in the room here.
It is everything.
The source material spends a lot of time analyzing what happens if you miscalculate and try to use blunt force in these situations. Let's visualize this.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine you walk up to a senior leader. You have all the data on your side, you know you are right, and you use a completely declarative statement. You say, your strategy for the European market is flawed. We must adopt my decentralized framework instead.
Oh, wow. If you say that, regardless of how accurate your data is, you have immediately lost the battle. Instantly. The text points out that a blunt, declarative statement like that does not register to a senior executive as helpful feedback. It registers as a threat.
It triggers an immediate, reflexive ego defense mechanism.
Let's explore why that happens. Why are these incredibly successful, highly paid executives so defensive? You would think that at that level, they would welcome pure, unadulterated facts.
You have to understand the psychology of the C-suite. Their entire identity, their compensation, their perceived value to the board, it is all inextricably linked to their strategic vision.
Right. So when you walk in and say your strategy is flawed, you aren't just critiquing a PDF document.
You are attacking their competence. Neurologically, you are triggering their amygdala.
The fight or flight response.
Exactly. You have bypassed their logical processing centers entirely and initiated a survival response.
The C2 vocabulary breakdown uses a very specific, very potent word to describe what you've just done to that leader in that moment. You have emasculated their authority.
Emasculated, that is a heavy word.
It is a word with heavy connotations, but in a broad corporate context, it means to completely deprive someone of their power, authority, or effectiveness.
And critically, this is amplified 100-fold if you do it in front of an audience, right?
Oh, for sure. By bluntly telling a CEO their strategy is flawed in a meeting, you haven't just disagreed with them, you have publicly stripped them of their dominance.
And what's their reaction going to be?
Their only psychological recourse to restore their standing in the tribe is to shut you down, dismiss your data, and reclaim their alpha position.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to make sure we really grasp the tactical error here. Think of it like a medieval siege.
I like this analogy.
The senior leader's strategy is a fortified castle. If you use blunt feedback, your strategy is flawed, that is a frontal assault on the castle gates. You're marching your troops right up the middle of the field.
They see you coming from a mile away.
They see you. They pull up the drawbridge, they man the cannons, they pour the boiling oil, and they destroy your argument simply because you attack them directly.
It doesn't matter if you have a better economic model.
Not at all. You lose because of how you approach the wall.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. The frontal assault guarantees heavy casualties, and usually the only casualty is your own career trajectory.
But the C2 level communicator, the true master of the velvet-draped battlefield, doesn't do that.
No, they are much smarter than that.
They achieve the exact same strategic objective. They still manage to change the European strategy to their decentralized model, but not through blunt force. They do it by slipping the suggestion through the back door while the castle guards are looking the other way.
And the skeleton key they use to unlock that back door is a linguistic concept called modality.
Modality. Okay, let's dig into that.
Modality is a fascinating linguistic category, and it is the absolute bedrock of corporate diplomacy. At its core, modality refers to words or phrases that express a degree of uncertainty, probability, or possibility.
So we're talking about modal verbs and adverbs, like could, might, perhaps, may, or it's possible that.
Exactly. And this is where my mind was totally blown and where I really need to push back a little bit on conventional wisdom.
What do you mean?
Because I think a lot of novices, myself absolutely included early in my career, are taught from day one of our professional lives that we should avoid hedging at all costs.
Oh, yeah. We read all these career advice articles that say, stop using filler words.
Right. Stop saying might or perhaps. It makes you sound weak, makes you sound unsure of yourself. Be confident. Speak in declarative.
Are you saying all that advice is just wrong?
I am saying that advice is contextually blind. Yes, if you are an expert giving a keynote presentation on a stage, speak declaratively. But in the context of managing upwards.
In the context of diplomacy.
Yes. In diplomacy and managing the fragile egos of powerful people, hedging is not a sign of weakness. It is your absolute greatest diplomatic weapon.
The novice views the word might as a lack of confidence.
Exactly, but the C2 level communicator views the word might as a shock absorber. You are intentionally softening the blow of your critique so that it can bypass the amygdala without setting off the alarms.
So instead of the frontal assault, your strategy is flawed, the text gives us the C2 level alternative. Let's look at what actually happens in the room when you use modality.
Okay, let's hear the C2 version.
You approach the leader, you wait for the right moment, and you say, given the recent volatility in the European supply chain, what might the implications be if we were to explore an alternative, decentralized distribution model?
What's fascinating here is the sheer density of the linguistic tactics layered into that one single elegant sentence. It is a masterpiece of corporate subterfuge.
It really is.
First, as we discussed, you have the modality, the strategic use of the word might, but more importantly, you have the deployment of interrogative syntax.
Interrogative syntax, meaning phrasing your critique as a question rather than a statement.
Exactly. You are entirely avoiding a declarative mandate. You haven't told the CTO they are wrong. You haven't even told them your idea is better.
You've posed a hypothetical scenario.
A hypothetical scenario that inherently exposes the critical flaw in their current plan, the supply chain volatility. But you framed it as a collaborative exploration. You are inviting them to solve a puzzle with you.
It completely shifts the dynamic. You aren't a subordinate challenging their authority. You are a loyal lieutenant asking for their seasoned, brilliant insight on a hypothetical challenge.
The source material refers to this specific technique as linguistic inception.
Linguistic inception. Drawing, of course, from the metaphorical concept of the film Inception, right?
Yes. The act of planting an idea in someone's mind so perfectly, so seamlessly, that they genuinely believe they originated the thought themselves.
But wait, does this actually work? I mean, if the CEO is smart enough to run the company, aren't they smart enough to see that you are just thinly veiling a critique as a question? Don't they see through the inception?
Some might sense what you're doing, but the beauty of linguistic inception is that even if they know you are guiding them, you have still provided them with a face-saving mechanism.
Ah.
You haven't cornered them. You haven't emasculated them publicly. You've given them an off-ramp.
You left the velvet drape intact.
Precisely. And the text points out that to pull off true, flawless linguistic inception, you have to utilize Socratic questioning.
Like ancient Greece.
Exactly, dating back to ancient Greece. You guide them question by question, systematically eliminating the flawed options until they arrive at your exact conclusion. But here's the massive catch.
There's always a catch.
And this is where most highly ambitious professionals fail. To do this successfully, it requires a monumental suppression of your own ego.
Because you don't get to stand up and say, I saved the European market.
Exactly. You have to be willing to let the CEO turn to the room and say, I've been thinking about the volatility, and I've decided we need to move to a decentralized model.
Wow, that would hurt.
You have to sit there quietly and let them take all the credit for the brilliant solution that you secretly spoon-fed to them over the course of 20 minutes.
Which is agonizingly difficult for type A, highly ambitious people to do. We want the credit. We want the promotion. We want everyone to know we had the good idea.
But this raises a profound question about what your actual objective in that boardroom really is. You have to ask yourself, do you want the fleeting dopamine hit of being publicly acknowledged as the smartest person in the room?
Which will likely earn you the resentment of your boss.
Right. Or do you want to actually change the European strategy, achieve the strategic outcome for the business, and quietly consolidate your power as the invisible architect behind the throne?
It's deeply Machiavellian. It requires an almost monastic level of emotional discipline.
Yeah.
If you can suppress your ego, you can control the outcome.
That's the essence of managing up.
Okay, that is all about managing upwards. That is how you handle people with significantly more structural power than you. But the text then introduces a sharp, rather chilling contradiction.
The dark side.
Because what happens when that exact same polite linguistic restraint, all those words like respect and aware, are used by someone who isn't trying to help you?
That brings us to the dark side of soft power. We are moving from the delicate diplomacy of managing up to the brutal hand-to-hand combat of managing laterally.
Peer-to-peer warfare.
Because the corporate boardroom is the natural, undisturbed habitat of the passive-aggressive microaggression.
Weaponized courtesy. Yeah. That is the phrase from the text, and it is chillingly accurate. It highlights this bizarre phenomenon where, in high-level corporate English, the most devastating, soul-crushing insults are almost invariably cloaked in the language of profound respect.
It's so true.
If someone yells at you, they are out of control. If someone professionally destroys you while smiling, they are an executive.
It relies entirely on the concept of a veneer. Our C2 vocabulary guide defines a veneer as a superficial or deceptively pleasing appearance.
Like cheap furniture.
Think of a cheap piece of particle board covered in a millimeter-thin layer of expensive mahogany. The hostility underneath is entirely real, it is visceral.
But it's hidden.
But it is shielded from HR and shielded from immediate retaliation by this thick veneer of collegial politeness.
Let's get into the specifics because the text gives us two massive linguistic traps to look out for, and they are so ubiquitous it actually hurts to read them.
Let's hear them.
Let's start with what the source calls the undisputed heavyweight champion of corporate condescension. It is the phrase, with all due respect.
Oh, man. If you are in a meeting and a colleague turns to you and begins a sentence with all due respect, your heart rate should immediately spike.
You should instinctively brace yourself for impact.
Because semantically, in modern corporate syntax, that phrase served absolutely no other purpose than to act as a linguistic hall pass to be profoundly disrespectful.
It's incredible how we all collectively agree to this lie. It literally translates to, I am about to completely dismantle your argument. I am probably going to insult your intelligence, your methodology, and your entire department in front of our mutual boss.
Yep, that's exactly what it means.
But because I preemptively sprinkled the actual word respect at the beginning of my verbal attack, HR cannot formally reprimand me for creating a hostile work environment.
It is a remarkably cynical phrase. It's the equivalent of saying no offense before saying something deeply offensive, but elevated to a C-suite level.
It allows the attacker to maintain their professional composure.
They keep that velvet drape perfectly smoothed out, their voice never raises, their tone remains even, all while sliding a dagger between your ribs.
And if you react emotionally,
if you get upset, you are the one who looks unprofessional. The attacker can simply hold up their hands and claim, I was merely offering constructive pushback, and I even prefaced it respectfully. Why is John being so emotional?
it weaponizes your own reaction against you. But as toxic and cynical as that is, it honestly doesn't hold a candle to the second trap the text outlines.
The second one is rough.
This one makes my blood boil because I have fallen for it, and I know everyone listening has fallen for it too. It's the phrase, as I'm sure you are already aware.
Ah, yes, the collegial flattery trap. This is a masterclass in putting someone in an inescapable psychological bind.
It really is. The subtext here is glaringly obvious to everyone in the room except, perhaps, the person being targeted.
The person saying this knows, they know with 100% empirical certainty that you are not aware of the information they are about to present.
That is exactly why they're bringing it up.
Exactly. But by saying, as I am sure you are already aware, they are publicly highlighting your ignorance while wrapping it in this disgusting, syrupy facade of collegial flattery.
They are pretending to assume you are highly competent, knowing full well they're about to prove you aren't.
It creates a perfectly designed, flawlessly executed catch-22.
And this is where I have to pause and represent the listener's frustration. Because when I read this, my immediate thought was, how is this a trap? Why do we have to play these games?
Because it's corporate warfare.
But if someone says, as I'm sure you're aware, the European server migration failed last night, why can't I just look at them and say, no, actually, I wasn't aware of that data? Thank you for telling me. Why not just be an honest, straightforward human being?
Because the boardroom is not a place for vulnerable honesty. It is a place of perceived competence. If we connect this to the bigger picture of how corporate hierarchies evaluate talent, you will see exactly why honesty is instantly punished in this scenario.
Okay, let's break down the two prongs of the catch-22 they have just placed you in. Let's say you do what you just suggested. You admit that you weren't aware of the critical server failure.
Okay, so I say I didn't know.
Instantly, you look entirely incompetent in front of your peers, and more importantly, in front of leadership.
Right, you look isolated, you look out of the loop.
You are essentially publicly confessing that you do not have a firm grasp on the operational realities of your own division. The attacker has successfully highlighted a gap in your knowledge.
Okay, that is a terrible outcome. So my immediate survival instinct, the lizard part of my brain, tells me to just nod along. I stroke my chin, I look serious, and I say, yes, of course, the server failure. I pretend I already knew it to save face and project competence.
But the trap closes from the other direction.
Because if you pretend you were aware of this critical issue all along, the immediate follow-up thought in the mind of the CEO is, wait, if you knew the server failed, why didn't you do anything about it?
You instantly look redundant, negligent, and passive for not having acted on that critical information sooner. The attacker has boxed you in perfectly.
They're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Precisely. By faking politeness, they have initiated a public shaming ritual where neither option, admitting ignorance or feigning knowledge, allows you to escape with your professional reputation entirely intact. You either look stupid or you look lazy.
It is absolutely brutal. It is a trap with no easy exit. It's like stepping on a landmine. You can't step off and you can't stay on.
Which leads us, logically, to the most critical question of this entire deep dive. How on earth do you survive this? How do you defend yourself against a trap that is so perfectly maliciously laid out?
The source material provides us with the ultimate C2 defense mechanism. It is the only way out of the catch-22, and it is a cognitive and linguistic tactic known as literal interpretation.
Literal interpretation.
Yeah.
I want to spend some serious time unpacking this because this feels like an absolute superpower once you understand the mechanics of it. How does it work?
The methodology relies on a supreme, almost unnatural amount of emotional control. We talked earlier about the amygdala and the fight-or-flight response.
Right.
When the passive-aggressive microaggression comes your way, when someone drops the, as I'm sure you're aware, bomb on you, your body will flood with adrenaline. You will feel your face get hot, you will want to lash out, or you will want to shrink away.
Right, because my ego is under attack.
Exactly. But to execute literal interpretation, you must mentally quarantine that emotional response. You must completely strip away the toxic sarcasm and the condescension from the attacker's statement.
You must refuse to take the emotional bait they are dangling in front of you.
Instead, you listen to their sentence, you run it through a mental filter, and you respond exclusively to the literal, empirical, semantic value of the words they spoke. You pretend the subtext simply does not exist.
You treat them like a robot delivering a line of code.
That's a great way to think of it.
Let's actually walk through this specific boardroom scenario provided in the source text, because seeing this in action is incredible. We are going to do a little role play so you can hear the mechanics of this defense.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's set the scene. I am your hostile colleague. We are in a major quarterly review meeting. The department heads are watching. We are competing for the same budget. I lean forward. I look across the mahogany table with a fake condescending smile, and I say, well, as I'm sure you're aware, the data you just presented is fundamentally out of date.
And in response, I do not break eye contact. I do not frown. I maintain an utterly impassive, completely calm expression, and I reply, thank you for highlighting that discrepancy. I was actually relying on the Q2 metrics provided by your team yesterday. If you possess more current data, please circulate it to the group so we can recalibrate the projections in real time.
Wow. Okay, let's freeze time right there.
Yeah.
You successfully parry the insult without ever breaking your professional veneer for a single second.
That's the goal.
Our C2 vocabulary list defines to parry, which is originally a fencing term, as warding off a weapon or attack with a countermove, or answering an accusation cleverly and evasively. And that is exactly what you just executed.
Yeah.
It was a flawless linguistic parry.
Let's dissect exactly why that countermaneuver is so devastating to the attacker, because there are 3 distinct phases to that defense.
Okay, phase 1.
Phase 1, I didn't get angry, I didn't stammer, I didn't flush red, and I didn't get defensive. By opening with, thank you for highlighting that discrepancy, I matched their faux politeness perfectly.
You took their literal words, which were framed as helpful information.
And I accepted them literally. I essentially said, I agree, we are just 2 professionals sharing data. That neutralizes their emotional attack.
But the real genius, the kill shot, is the pivot in phase 2.
Yeah.
I was actually relying on the metrics provided by your team yesterday.
Exactly. I anchored my defense in empirical accountability. Notice I didn't say, it's not my fault. That sounds whiny and defensive.
Very defensive.
Instead, I stated a verifiable chronological fact about the supply chain of the data. And in doing so, I subtly and seamlessly shifted the spotlight of blame off of my presentation and back onto the attacker's department for providing the outdated data in the first place.
It is a total judo flip. They tried to use your supposed ignorance to publicly shame you, and you used the momentum of their own attack to highlight their team's operational inefficiency. You used their weight against them.
It works every time.
And then, phase 3, you finish them off with, if you possess more current data, please circulate it to the group.
That is the trap snapping shut on them. You are demanding that they put their money where their mouth is.
Oh, that's brilliant.
If they actually have better data, they now have a public obligation to do the administrative work of sharing it with everyone. If they don't actually have the data and they were just bluffing to pick a fight, they look petty and disruptive.
You have neutralized the microaggression by forcing the conversation violently out of the realm of emotional subtext and back into the cold, hard realm of tangible deliverables.
It is brilliant. But let me throw a wrench in this. What if they don't do this in a live meeting?
Because a lot of corporate warfare isn't face-to-face anymore.
Right. What if this happens over email? What if they pull the classic move where they send the microaggression, but they CC your boss, their boss, and half the department?
Oh, the literal interpretation defense works even better in written communication because you have time to edit out your emotional reaction. If they BCC or CC the world and say, as I'm sure you're aware, this project is delayed, your instinct is to hit reply all with a massive defensive essay explaining all the reasons it isn't your fault.
The paragraph of panic.
A paragraph of panic, exactly. Do not write the paragraph of panic. You hit reply all and you write 2 sentences. Thank you for the visibility on the delay. Please forward the updated timeline from your vendor so I can adjust our internal milestones.
It is the exact same, Perry. You accept the premise literally, you strip the emotion, and you hand them a task. When the bosses read that exchange, the attacker looks emotional and aggressive, and you look like a calm, unbothered project manager simply seeking data.
It requires so much discipline. It is an art form. But as we examine the architecture of these meetings, the text points out something fascinating. We've talked about how passive-aggressive language is used to protect the individual and attack colleagues.
Yep.
But there's a whole different category of linguistic subterfuge. It's not used for interpersonal combat. It is used to protect the entire room from doing actual work.
We are moving from the realm of interpersonal defense mechanisms to the profound phenomenon of collective failure. We are shifting from individual survival to organizational decay.
We are entering the linguistic void of the vaporware meeting.
Vaporware. According to the C2 bonus vocabulary breakdown, this was originally a tech industry term from the 1980s. It referred to software or hardware that a company loudly announces, heavily promotes to investors, maybe even designs a logo for, but never actually manufactures or releases to the public.
It's vapor. It doesn't exist.
The source material takes this technological concept and applies it metaphorically to corporate meetings.
It is a brilliantly apt metaphor. A vaporware meeting is one that produces an enormous amount of sophisticated talk.
Wow.
You might even have genuine high-level strategic debates. People are sketching on whiteboards, they're leaning in, they're utilizing advanced business frameworks.
But at the end of the hour, it results in absolutely zero tangible outcomes. It generates a nebulous fog of corporate jargon where nothing actually happens.
Nebulous. Like a cloud, a haze, vague and indistinct. We have all been in these meetings. They are the bane of corporate existence.
They drag on for 2 hours.
And everyone in the room is vigorously nodding and agreeing that, quote, synergies must be leveraged across verticals, or we need to optimize our bandwidth. People are throwing around buzzwords, sounding incredibly smart, building off each other's points.
And then we reach the final 5 minutes of the meeting. Time is up. People start checking their phones, closing their laptops. And how does the person leading the meeting conclude it?
Oh, I know this one.
With a vague, entirely non-committal sign-off like, great discussion, everyone, so we'll keep an eye on this and circle back next week.
Circle back next week. It is the mating call of the highly paid, highly ineffective executive. It is infuriating because you know you're going to have the exact same conversation next Tuesday.
And the text identifies this not just as an annoyance, but as a catastrophic failure of leadership. But the expert linguistic analysis in the source material goes deeper than just blaming bad management. It isolates the exact grammatical culprit responsible for generating this nebulous fog.
It all comes down to the pervasive, systemic abuse of the passive voice. The passive voice is the engine of the vaporware meeting.
Can you give an example?
When a meeting concludes with statements like the report will be finalized or the client needs to be contacted regarding the discrepancy, the speaker is intentionally detaching the action from the actor.
The verb exists, but the subject who must perform the verb has vanished into the ether.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me because grammar can feel so abstract. Think about the passive versus the active voice like a physical game of catch.
Okay, a game of catch.
If I look you directly in the eye, say your name, and hand you a baseball, it is undeniably yours. You possess the ball. You feel the weight of it in your hands. But using the passive voice in a boardroom, saying the report needs to be finalized, is like taking that same baseball, throwing it high up into a massive crowd of people, and just blindly hoping that someone, anyone, decides to reach up and catch it.
Let's extend that metaphor even further, because in a corporate environment, that ball isn't just a baseball, it's a live grenade.
Oh, a live grenade. That raises the stakes.
The report that needs to be finalized represents hours of tedious, unglamorous work. So if you throw that grenade into the crowd, what happens? Everyone is going to take a collective step back, put their hands in their pockets, and watch it hit the floor.
Nobody wants to dive on the grenade.
Exactly. This taps into a very well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the diffusion of responsibility. If an action needs to be done, but no specific human being is assigned to do it, the psychological burden on any single individual drops to zero.
Everyone assumes someone else in the room will handle it.
The passive voice acts as an impenetrable linguistic shield against accountability. When next week's meeting rolls around and the report isn't done, no one can be formally reprimanded, because no one was ever explicitly told they were the one who had to do it.
It is the ultimate evasion tactic. It allows a group of people to feel immensely productive, to look incredibly busy, and to collect their salaries without actually taking on any personal risk or committing to any measurable workload.
It's a comfortable fog.
So if the passive voice is the disease creating this nebulous fog of inaction, how do we cure it? What is the antidote to the vaporware meeting?
The cure requires a complete aggressive syntactic shift. If the passive voice is the fog, the final step in our C2 mastery is learning the specific language required to impose order, clear the air, and force action.
The source material details exactly what a true C2 level professional does in the critical final 2 minutes of any meeting. They don't let it fade out into a fog of circling back. They physically and vocally seize the floor, and they construct something called the accountability matrix.
The accountability matrix represents a total, uncompromising shift from the passive voice back to the active voice. Instead of saying what needs to happen out in the universe, the leader issues binding, chronological directives that directly tether specific individuals to specific, measurable actions.
Let's read the exact quote from the text, because it is an absolute masterclass in clarity.
Go for it.
The meeting is wrapping up, people are reaching for their coats, and the leader cuts through the noise and says, "All right, let's summarize our deliverables before we leave. Sarah, you will synthesize the European sales data by Thursday at noon. David, you will draft the risk assessment by Friday close of business. I will consolidate both of your documents into the final brief for the CEO by Monday morning."
Look at the absolute surgical precision of that phrasing. It is an architectural marvel of management. Who, what, and precisely when. Sarah will do X by Y, David will do A by B, and critically, I will do C by D. The leader takes accountability too.
The active voice leaves absolutely zero room for interpretation.
The grenade hasn't been thrown into the crowd. It has been meticulously diffused, divided into pieces, and handed directly to Sarah and then directly to David.
But I have to push back here on behalf of our listeners who aren't the CEO. If I'm the CEO, sure, I can dictate that. But what if I'm just a mid-level project manager?
That's a fair point.
What if Sarah and David are my peers, or even slightly senior to me? If I seize the floor and say, "Sarah, you will do X by Y," aren't they going to resent me? Aren't I going to sound incredibly arrogant assigning them homework?
That is a very valid concern, and it all comes down to tonal framing. You don't deliver the accountability matrix like a drill sergeant barking orders. You frame it as a helpful administrative service you are providing to the group. I say, just to make sure I'm capturing our amazing brainstorming session correctly for the notes, and then you deliver the matrix. You are wrapping the iron-fisted accountability in the velvet glove of administrative helpfulness. People will rarely stop you because nobody else wants to volunteer to take the notes and summarize the chaos.
You take the burden of summarizing, which secretly gives you the power to dictate the terms. It's brilliant. But the matrix isn't quite finished yet. There is one final crucial piece to this puzzle.
The padlock.
Yes. The text refers to it metaphorically as the linguistic padlock. It is the absolute final sentence spoken before the meeting adjourns, and it goes exactly like this. Are we unequivocally aligned on those action items?
Unequivocally aligned. Our C2 vocabulary list defines unequivocal as leaving no doubt, clear, unambiguous. If we connect this to the bigger picture of corporate accountability, asking that specific interrogative question, are we unequivocally aligned, does something psychologically and almost legally profound in a boardroom.
Because it forces everyone to stop packing their bags and actually speak.
Precisely. You don't just ask it and look down at your notes. You ask it and you make eye contact with Sarah. You wait for her to say yes. Then you look at David. You wait for him to nod and say yes. It forces a public verbal confirmation from every single participant who is just assigned a task.
By making them say yes out loud in front of their peers, you are creating an inescapable verbal and psychological contract.
You are locking the padlock. Click.
They cannot come back next week and claim they misunderstood their responsibilities. They cannot play the diffusion of responsibility card and say, "I thought marketing was handling that." They cannot claim the Friday deadline was unclear.
Because you force them to publicly, unequivocally consent to the matrix, you have taken a chaotic 2-hour conversation full of vaporware, buzzwords, and passive-aggressive dodging, and you have distilled it into an inescapable, binding commitment.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why does dissecting all of this matter? It means that true power in a corporate setting isn't just about having the right title or having a vast vocabulary of impressive buzzwords to sound smart.
It is about understanding the hidden mechanics of how language drives human behavior.
It's about utilizing syntax to impose order onto chaos, to bypass the ego, to defend against hostility, to enforce accountability, and as the source material so beautifully puts it, to bend the narrative trajectory of a corporation to your will.
It is a profound realization when it finally clicks. Most people think language is just how we describe the work we do, but at the highest levels of any organization, language is the work. The words are the gears turning the entire machine.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. And appropriately, the text has actually assigned you, the listener, some very specific, tangible homework to put these linguistic tools into immediate practice this week.
Yes, your homework is twofold. First, your mission this week is observational and defensive. I want you to look through your inbox and pay very close attention in your weekly meetings. Try to identify the passive-aggressive microaggressions being deployed around you.
When you spot them, when you see that, as I'm sure you're aware, slide into an email chain, practice the literal interpretation defense. Even if you just do it in your head at first, strip away the toxic subtext and formulate a response based only on the literal empirical facts.
That is step one. Step two is offensive. In your very next meeting, especially if you sense it turning into vaporware, I want you to volunteer to summarize the action items at the end. Seize those final 2 minutes.
Practice deploying the active voice.
Yeah.
Build an accountability matrix. Name the specific people, attach them to specific deadlines, and then snap that linguistic padlock shut by looking them in the eye and asking if everyone is unequivocally aligned.
And as you implement this homework, make a conscious effort to integrate today's elite lexicon into your cognitive framework. Make these concepts part of the lens through which you view your office. Look for the subterfuge.
Recognize when someone is attempting to bluntly emasculate a colleague and notice the chaos it causes. Utilize modality to safely manage up. Learn to calmly parry insults, destroy vaporware before it forms, and demand unequivocal alignment from your peers.
It is a completely different way to play the corporate game. You are no longer just a piece on the board. You are the one quietly moving the pieces.
But as we wrap up today, there's one final, lingering, somewhat provocative question that I want to leave you with. It's something for you to mull over on your commute or during your next coffee break, extrapolating from everything we've explored today.
It is a fascinating thought experiment.
We've established over the last hour that the ultimate form of corporate power is achieving your goals through invisible linguistic inception, flawlessly parrying attacks with literal interpretation, and locking down vaporware with the active voice. But what happens when an entire boardroom, an entire C-suite, is filled exclusively with C2-level communicators who are all intimately aware of and actively using these exact same tactics on each other at the exact same time?
If every single person in the room is meticulously suppressing their ego, heavily deploying modality to mask their critiques, stripping away emotional subtext, and constantly trying to architect the accountability matrix.
Exactly. What is the ultimate result of that? Does it result in a perfect, flawless utopia of extreme operational efficiency, where everyone is perfectly aligned, flawlessly polite, and perfectly accountable?
Or does it create a total paralyzing stalemate, a gridlock of undetectable subterfuge, where no one ever actually says what they mean and nothing is ever truly what it seems?
A fascinating paradox to ponder as you step back onto the velvet-draped battlefield this week. Keep your eyes open, watch out for those microaggressions hiding behind smiles, and always remember to secure the padlock before you leave the room. Thanks for diving deep with us today.